Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Perperis. My co-host, Brenna Calvert, will not be joining us this week. This episode is brought to you by Hammer Nutrition. If you're looking for some great endurance supplements, some protein, or just some general vitamins, check out hammernutrition.com. Use code 240887 at checkout and get 15% off your first order. Also, make sure you check out the Team Strength Speed website. We just put up a whole bunch of new discount codes in the discount section. So codes like SS10 will get you 10% off an order from RecBag, and just put up a discount code for, I believe it's $10 off of Neptune Performance Products. That's that synthetic shirt with the little heat pads that I've been wearing for Toughest Mudder and World's Toughest Mudder. So definitely go over there and check that out. Joining me on today's episode is Travis Esterby. Travis Esterby is a 20-year veteran of the Army. He's run several 100-milers, including the big ones, Leadville 100 in Western States. He also owns the Runner's Hub, Clarksville, Tennessee's only running store. And some upcoming races he's got this year include some ultras, including a 100-mile race, and the Army 10-miler. So, Travis, welcome to the show.
Hey, Evan, thanks for having me, brother.
Cool, yeah, it's great. It's great to have you on. You're definitely someone I've looked up to for a long time, and someone I've known through work, and pretty much any time I start talking about what I do for fun or my hobby, people are like, oh, you know Travis? And it's like, yeah, I know Travis, because not many people run ultra distance. So
yeah, well, I get the same thing from the other side. You know, people start talking to me about running or something, and then they're like, hey, do you know Evan? I'm like, yeah, I know Evan. I've seen him around a couple times. Like, I see him basically every Sunday at my store. Well, at least on the weekend, you stop by because the Starbucks is your watering hole. I think about mid-run. So so I get to see you pretty much every week. Yeah,
that's correct. So I like to use Starbucks as a mid-run snack. So I'll run like 10 miles from my house to Starbucks, and which is like 2 doors down from the Runner's Hub. Grab a coffee, get some sugar in me, stop by, say hi to you, and then run about 10 miles home. So good technique if anyone wants to break up their long run.
Yeah, it also makes me feel bad, like if I'm taking that day off and then I see you and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do a 20. And I'm like, well, I guess I got to go run today too then. So kind of motivates me.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about some ultra running and kind of what that training consists of. We'll talk about a little bit about Travis's time in the military and how that translates into, fitness performance and mental strength for ultra running, and kind of the dream that I think almost every athlete has of like opening your own business. In Travis's case, it was a running store. So I guess let's start off with just ultra running in general. So for those of people who don't know, tell us what Leadville and Western States is and kind of where they rank in the ultra running community.
Yeah, so Western States is kind of the Super Bowl of 100-milers. They actually just had it a couple weeks ago, but it basically brings in some of the best racers from not only this country but really worldwide. Everyone's trying to get into it. And then Leadville is another really big one. It starts out at 10,000 feet up, and I think when you go up over Hope Pass, you're going about 12.6. So it's a significant event for me being a kind of a flatlander in Tennessee, not having any altitude to train in. So those are kind of the two big ones I've done. I've done quite a few other ultra distance races, but those are kind of the two that everyone tries to get into, and kind of the hard ones to get into as well. And
how do those kind of stack up compared to the other ones? Like, I know For like just regular running, Boston Marathon's like kind of like the big deal. And after doing a bunch of marathons, I know when I did Boston, it really delivered on its expectations. Like it was, just everyone there is just an obsessive runner, and there was like 26.2 miles of people lining the street. So as far as the atmosphere at Western States and Leadville, and then also like the level of competition you covered, but then like actual difficulty compared to other hundreds.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So as far as like Western States, like it lived up to every expectation I had. A lot of things that you hear all the hype behind it, and you get there and you're like, this is it. Western States was one of those races that it lived up to the hype. I mean, the aid stations were awesome. I had a pretty large crew, but every time you came into an aid station, everyone was so supportive. Even the runners, everyone has the same goal of finishing that thing. And but everyone was really supportive. It gets really hot. You start in basically the base of a ski lift in Squaw Valley, and your first 4 miles are kind of running up that ski lift, and then you plateau and you're running a lot of ridge lines and whatnot. I think it's about 18,000 up total and 24,000 down. So it's kind of a downhill race, but 24,000 down really eats up the quads. But definitely Western States lived up to its expectations. That's one of those ones where if you get into it, go do it. And, even if you've done it multiple times, it's one of those things you want to continue to do. And then Leadville, the last few years, they've kind of tried to do some rebranding. The original guy that put it on, I think he sold the race to I think it was like Lifetime Fitness, some big organization, and they were just letting a ton of people in. So the amount of people they were letting in to, the amount of aid stations they had and the amount of stuff they had at the aid stations, the math wasn't adding up. So they were running out of water. They're doing, so they actually hired the guy that initially started it several years back, and they've done some rebranding. So they've decreased the amount of runners. It's an out and back course, so I was a little hesitant on that just because it's 50 out, 50 back, and you have all these runners. How crowded is the trail going to be? But really, that didn't bother me at all. It wasn't like I was constantly around people, or with it just being one single track out and back. I didn't feel crowded. I was still able to enjoy the course.
So do you prefer a couple people on the course to kind of like keep you company, or would you rather kind of zone out and be on your own, just cruising through the woods?
Kind of both, man. Like in the beginning, because I don't run with like headphones or anything, I just kind of zone out. I like to mix it up. Once in a while, you'll get that like guy that just wants to keep talking and you don't want to talk. So you either got to hit the gas pedal a little bit, or if he's hitting the gas pedal, maybe slow down a little bit just to kind of enjoy the trails. Because some guys or ladies they'll talk your ear off, and you're in an ultra it's a significant hour commitment. So you could be with this guy for 2 hours, and he's just talking your ear off, and man. So yeah, once you've been out there a while though, it's cool to have a little bit of company. But I'm kind of that guy that I don't talk too much to just random people. I'm good for a 15-20 minute conversation, but when it starts to get an hour or 2 hours, I'll hammer on the gas a little bit.
Yeah, luckily with ultra distance obstacle course racing, typically you're not running with anyone for that long, even if you're running at the same pace, because you'll hit a couple of obstacles, and that'll, sometimes the guy you're running with will fail, or sometimes you'll fail, and then he has to do the penalty loop. So you end up very rarely am I running with someone for more than like 10 minutes, and then we end up going in different directions for a little bit. So
yeah, it's cool to meet all sorts of different people, and some of these races are really big, so you meet people throughout the whole nation, and you end up Facebook friends later, so you end up following them on see what they have coming up and whatnot. It's just once in a while you get that random person that really likes to talk a lot more than you. It's it's a little overwhelming sometimes.
Right on. And how did you do? Like, what was your goals going in? Then how did you actually perform at Leadville in Western States?
So Leadville was kind of weird for me. I had a lot of like work military stuff, so I didn't get to train the way I wanted to train. So Leadville was really, and I didn't know what to expect with the altitude. So Leadville was really one of those races that I just wanted to get through it. I didn't know how my body was going to react at 10,000 feet, and close to 13,000 feet. So I looked at some of kind of my regional competition within my region, guys that have done it, and I looked at their times, and kind of my goal was to kind of beat the times that they were putting down, and I ended up doing that. I think I was 25 hours and something. I was in a little bit better shape than that. I got kind of sick there at mile 77, 78. I had a hard time keeping anything down. I think it was more altitude sickness stuff. So the last 22, I lost a couple hours there. But all in all, in Leadville, I definitely achieved the goal. Western States, I had like 3 goals. I was in pretty good shape going into it. So a big thing at Western States is going sub 24. It started out as like a horse race, and that was like, kind of a big feat if your horse could do it in sub 24. So, ultimate goal was to finish, obviously. Secondary was sub 24, and then I felt like I was in kind of low 20-hour shape, and ended up getting it in about 23 something.
Nice.
I was still sub 24, but I was in a little bit better shape than the time that I had.
You get a belt buckle for sub 24, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, you get so there's a couple different categories of belt buckles, like a silver and gold. So sub 24, you'll get that silver belt buckle, which I got it hanging up at my store. So all sorts of people can come in and look at it. It's usually a topic of conversation within the store.
Yeah, the belt buckle is notorious in the ultra running community. I mean, that's like the finisher prize for every. I mean, I think it started out only as 100s, but occasionally I've seen them for like 50 milers or even 50Ks.
Yeah, well, I'll see them for different distances now. Some people get a little upset about, like, so people that have run 100 milers, like, hey, why are they giving out a belt buckle for 50 or whatever? I don't get too wrapped up in awards and things like that. Most of my belt buckles are at the store. They're usually framed and put up just so other people can check them out. But I don't wear them around like I'm a cowboy or anything.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with the ultra running scene, the belt buckles are usually like gaudy and obnoxious. Like some of them are straight ginormous. Like, I mean, you look ridiculous walking around, but then it draws attention. People are like, oh, what's your giant belt buckle for? You're like, no big deal. I just ran 100 miles a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's like when you go to like kind of like a pre-100 miler like race brief. You look around, and it could be like really hot, short weather. People are in like jeans with their belt buckle, and so it's like a rodeo, and everyone's like checking each other out, like sizing each other up by their buckles and their shades of color on their buckles. So I just go and act like I'm a rookie and let those guys show off their buckles.
Nice. So a lot of our listeners are obviously obstacle course racers, and kind of the big thing this year. A lot of people have been doing the 8-hour toughest mudder and the training for the 24-hour world's toughest mudder. Which the people in those races, so the winner usually covers around 100 miles, plus or minus 5 miles. But most people's goal is typically around 50 miles. So let's go through like what would be like a typical training week for you when you're preparing for a 100-mile race, and then if you had someone coming into the store and asking about preparing for a 50-mile race, what kind of mileage would you recommend for training for those people?
So my mileage base always stays around 50 to 60 a week, and then I'll slow as I get into kind of usually about a 16-week train up. I'll get to about 100 to 105 miles a week, depending on what you read. Some people say that's too high. Some people elites go higher than that. I base a lot of what I do off of what professional athletes are doing. Not that I'm a professional athlete, but if they're doing it and they're a professional athlete, then there's something to be said about that. I do get a lot of people in the store that want to talk to me about, that ultra distance, just because locally, if people are starting to talk about it, they're like, hey, you should go see Travis at the store. So they'll come in specifically just to talk to me. I really preach frequency before intensity. And when I say that frequency, the amount of times you run, intensity, how hard you run. So a lot of people, when they just get into running, they want to see results quick, and they'll just start with frequency, or they'll start with intensity too fast, and they haven't built up that frequency. So at the end of the day, frequency builds durability. And it's getting somebody into that mindset. And then also just adjusting that pace, because it is a slower run. And I came from a little bit faster running background, so it was kind of a transition for me, just changing up that gait. I was running, not fast, but in this 16 something for a 5K. It's not like elite level, but locally it's pretty fast. And then going from that to being comfortable with running 830 miles all day. It's just a little bit different in gait cycle. So just kind of transitioning that. I noticed I was getting a lot more sore after like a 20 miler at an 8:30 pace compared to a 20 miler at a 7-minute mile pace. So getting your gait used to it, but a newer runner, definitely working on that frequency before you do intensity. And then even if you're running that ultra distance, you can still focus on hard speed workouts just to fine tune your speed as well.
Yeah, I think you definitely hit on some great things. One being the consistency is huge. I mean, just preparing your joints and tendons and ligaments and stuff like that for the pounding, I think is just very important. And then the other thing I kind of like you hit on. So one of my rules for when I'm telling people, how to train for like World's Toughest Mudder is my rule is if you're going for a mileage goal in one day, you should be able to peak at that point at some point during the year. So like if your goal is 50 miles at World's Toughest Mudder or 100 miles, like you should peak at 50 or 100 miles before that, because I think I look at it mostly as a psychological thing. Like if you can't run 50 miles in a week, what makes you think you can run 50 miles in a day? And then also on top of that, obviously, like I said before, the ligament and tendon development. And, if you just go from not running at all to I'm going to run an ultramarathon, you're going to do some damage to your body and probably walk away with a stress fracture someplace. So.
Yeah, definitely. I'm under the same mindset. If I'm going to do a 100-mile race, then I'm going to do over 100 miles in a week. And 100 miles in a week is that's a lot of running. You got to, and I try to do that all one a day. Some people will kind of beef up their mileage per week by doing 2 a days, which is an easy way to get high mileage. But really, in the scheme of it, it's not necessarily building that durability. At least from what I've found, I like to get them all in one day. Usually, 6 runs in a week, 100 miles. Kind of that 100 to 110 point.
Yeah, I'll do the 2 a days, but I typically will do the longer run in the morning, and then I usually just tack on a couple of additional miles in the evening, after my strength training, because being an OCR athlete, right, I still need to maintain upper body strength, so I kind of tack a couple miles at the end of my lifting workout to call it a day.
Yeah, definitely. Like basically you guys are multi-sport athletes, so I kind of have I with work I still have to maintain my strength to body weight ratio, and I can't slouch on that. But you guys have so much more you got to work at it. It's crazy. A lot of people ask me like, hey, why don't you do triathlons? And I'm like, man, I have such a competitive mindset that I can barely fit in running. So I was like, until I have enough time to actually focus on 3 different sports, or even in the obstacle course racing, focus on two different disciplines, being that that strength discipline and the running discipline. I just don't have time for it now, but it is something that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, so I've done 2 iron distance triathlons, and the training for that was like, I felt like all I was doing was cardio literally all day, between swimming, biking, and running. And then like biking, like you can go for an hour run and be like, all right, yeah, that was a solid run. I got some good mileage in. Like you go for an hour bike, it's like, cool, that's a good warm up. Like when do we actually start biking? So especially biking, it just takes an exponentially large amount of time to get good at, especially if you don't have a cycling background.
And the money involved with it.
Oh, it's insane.
I kind of like the aspect of running where, shoes are only going to help you so much. At the end of the day, you have to train. I feel like that bike, you spend enough on that thing's going to help you out quite a bit. So, if I spent 1/10 of what, somebody else did on my bike, then they're just going to be better than me. They're going to go faster than me. So, so that was kind of another thing that I didn't really like about the sport. I could be totally wrong on that just because I haven't really dabbled in it, but I know some people that I'm in a little bit better shape than, but on a bike, they can just dominate. And it's not because they bike a lot. It's because they got a lot better bike.
Yep, my bike's like I think I paid like $1,500 for it in like 2004, and it's like bottom of the line triathlon. Like I can show up to a race and not be embarrassed, but that's about it. And I was looking to buy a new bike a couple of years ago, right before I got into OCR, and I was going to buy a $5,000 bike, and it was like kind of middle of the line, and that was without all the accessories, right? So like, that doesn't include the $2,000 wheels that are literally just wheels. So ended up waving off on that because luckily I got involved in OCR, which is not the cheapest sport either, but I think it's a lot cheaper than triathlon.
Yeah, I mean, I joke with my wife all the time. Like, I turned running into the most expensive sport ever. You figure, shoes. I got into the sport, and it's like shoes and shorts, and then after that, like, all right, shoes, and I'm running 7 days a week, sometimes twice a day. All right, I need 14 pairs of shorts. I'm running, all these miles. I'm going through shoes left and right. I usually rotate between 2 or 3 shoes. It got so expensive, man. I had to start my own store up.
Yeah, and then you need all the accessories, right? You need the roller, like the stick to roll out the muscles. You need the compression socks to help speed recovery so you can run faster. You need the supplements to fuel your training. All that good stuff.
It definitely gets up there in the price. But it's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun with it, and it's something I'm going to continue to do. So I just look at it as an investment. Plus, just on the healthy aspect of it, keeps you so much healthier. Being in the Army for 20 years, a lot of my peers are not doing as good.
We'll
see a lot of people.
Leave it at that. After you've been in a while, some people definitely let it go.
Yeah. Or they just get broke down, you know, they
true.
don't have that durability built up. So, you know, so if I go out and do a 12 to 15 mile road march tomorrow, I'm going to be fine. I'll probably run later on in the day, where, you know, some people that don't have that base built up and that durability, they're not going to be fine, and they'll get through it. You know, they'll get through it. But how are they going to be tomorrow and in the next day? And, you know, so I just think that the running portion has really built up a durability for me that really pertains to day-to-day work as well.
Yeah, so I know a little bit more about your military service than I'm going to share on this podcast, but I know you've been through some very challenging schools and training courses in the Army. So how do you think, and obviously you've been through, I don't know how many deployments, but it's a lot, right? It's been a lot of time overseas. So how do you think some of that experience has translated into your preparation and fitness, and then ultra running in general?
So, like, the school aspect of it, there's a level that it does give you kind of a mental toughness edge, just because you've brought your body to some pretty low points that once it gets down there again, it's like, oh, I've been here before. It's nothing new. So I think that gives you an edge, but it doesn't supplement for training. Some people try to live off of their military experience and like, oh, I did this, so I should be good at this. That doesn't necessarily equate. I think when things start going really bad for you, you always have a scenario in your head where you've probably been in a worse scenario. So you can always refer back to that and be like, it's not as bad as, you know, X, Y, or Z. So you know, I do refer back to that once in a while. But in all honesty, some of the stuff in these 100-milers, man, I give some of these people a lot, or all of them, a lot of credit. It's you get into some pretty low points. So it's amazing what, you know, some older people are out there, you know, 50, 60 years old, just hammering down miles. And you know, some of them are really, really good. It's crazy that, how well they do. And I think it has a lot to do with discipline and patience. You know, like, some of those guys aren't going to beat some of the people that they're beating at maybe your local 5K, but they're gonna kind of hang out, and they're just gonna get a pace, and they're gonna keep it, and they're gonna keep it all day. Where I kind of like that aspect of it. Like, there is a future in it for me. You know, I've been in the Army since I was 17, so I'm still pretty young. I'm 37, but you know, I can see myself doing this in 20 years because there are people that are doing it still, and they're 50, 60 years old, and they do well at it.
Yeah, definitely. As you age, you definitely lose some of that fast twitch muscle fiber, so you can't hit some of those top speeds. But if you maintain the training, your endurance can stay for a very long time, and you actually continue to improve.
Yeah, I kind of like that aspect of running, and that's kind of how I got into the ultra distance. Was I just wasn't as fast as what I was before. And there's a couple reasons why. One, the longer you've been in the Army, you kind of get more responsibility. The more responsibility you get, the less time you have. So my time to train kind of goes down, and then just my foot speed in general. I mean, you don't see people going to the Olympics for the 1500 that are almost 40. You know, so I mean, it's just how it is. You just get naturally slower. So I just found myself being able to compete at a higher level the longer the distance was.
Yeah, I know on one of the training runs me and you went on together, we're talking about what distances we like, and I was like, oh, I like marathons because, like, a fast runner, someone who's just naturally fast can show up and crush a 5K, they can crush a 10K, they can even crush a half marathon. But, like, once you get to the marathon distance, in my opinion, like, unless you've done at least a little bit of marathon-specific work, you're not going to do well. But what was funny was you basically said the same thing back to me, but at the 100-miler. You're like, yeah, you can, like, fumble your way through a 50-miler. I was like, but you can't really fumble your way through a 100-miler. And I was like, both of those seem very high. But I know you said you like to turn it on in, like, the last 25 miles or something of a 100-miler because people start breaking down.
Well, that's where you can make up you can catch a lot of people in the last 25. And that's the goal for me, is to really turn it on in the last 25. I don't know how well I've mastered it. I have been that guy a few times where people are passing me in the last 25. So there's times where you have a great race. There's times that you have a bad race. And the thing I like about the 100-mile distance is it can't be mastered. No matter how good of an athlete you are, you're going to have a bad race here and there. No matter how great a shape you're in, no matter how much you train, no matter how much you have your nutrition dialed in, you can blow up out there. I really like the professional athletes that stick with it, because there'll be some that just, I'm not having the day I want. I'm going to drop out and DNF, which for them is no big deal. They probably got paid to go out there and whatnot. But it's cool to see a pro athlete like really just grind it out and say, and I'm probably going to get passed by the guy that's a banker, that can only, get in 60 to 70 miles in a week. And this is what I do as a profession, but I'm going to stick it out and finish it. So that's pretty cool to see as well. I've seen them both. I've seen, pros drop out because, it just wasn't going their way. And I've seen pros stay in that, you end up passing.
Yeah, I definitely, I understand where they're coming from, like they're getting paid to do it. And, maybe if they push through this, it'll take a little bit longer to recover. So they'll have more trouble at their next race. But at the same time, I like that attitude of like, I came out here to do something. And even if my race is not perfect, I'm still going to push through it. I remember when I did my first Ironman triathlon, they had the race is dedicated to one of the athletes. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but on the back of the medal is this dude's picture and this dude's name. And he was doing great in the middle of the race and was top 3. And then, I don't know, I guess his race wasn't going the way he wanted. So he ends up dropping out. So I have a medal, and the back of the medal has this dude's picture on it, and all I can think about is this dude DNF'd the first Ironman, the one that I was this is my big life event at the time, and was really pushing hard to finish.
Yeah, and there's kind of two sides to it too. I really like when people go all out and just see what the body can do, and sometimes that means them blowing up. And in these long distance, endurance events, sometimes things just stop working. I remember in Western States, I was getting a little bit sick. It was really hot. It's probably close to 100 degrees, and going up this hill, and I had a pacer with me. I was like, "Hey, I need you to stand on the left side of me because I can't see right now." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "No, seriously, I can't see." So it went on for 3 or 4 minutes where my vision was going out, but I kept walking, and he just kind of walked between me and this cliff. And then it came back, and then I was fine. But it was kind of crazy. I was literally my eyes just stopped working. That's how So I could see I don't want people to push through an injury, or if you got a DNF, you got a DNF, because there are times when the distance can't be mastered, and at the end of the day, your body will stop working in some occasions. But it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I hear that. I know my first 100-miler, I did it. Actually, my only 100-miler straight running race. I did it a month after World's Toughest Mudder, which is a terrible idea, and I don't advise that. It's kind of a long story, but I was supposed to do World's Toughest Mudder with the team. I knew I wasn't the weakest guy on the team, so I was all right, well, it'll turn into a long training run for me because I'm not going to redline my body. And then I got a couple months before that, my team drops out, so I'm by myself. So I end up, like, you know, pushing as hard as I can, getting my 75 miles. And then I'd already signed up for this 100-miler a month later, and I was like, crap. So, yeah, like, kind of forced my own hand. So I show up, and the first 75 miles went about as good as they can go. It was a very flat course, so it was real fast pace. I did the first 75 miles in 14 hours, and then, like, my internal, like, hip flexor muscles just stopped working, and I limped the last 10 hours to the finish. So it was like 75 miles in 14 hours, and then the last 25 miles in 10 hours. So,
yeah, I've had some moments like that where, and that's honestly, that last 25 is really the tough part. So that's kind of how when I give people advice is, you know, it doesn't matter who's winning in 75. It matters, you know, where you're at 100. So if you just have some patience there, you're going to pick a lot of people off in that last 25, especially at aid stations. People get really, really comfortable at an aid station, you know, trying to, you know, grab as much fuel as they can. And, you know, the worst thing you can do is sit down. I've done most of my 100s I've done, but I didn't sit down one time just because things start locking up, and then it takes you a while to get everything loosened back up when you start running. And running that distance is so uncomfortable when you get to a certain point. And once you get yourself comfortable, you don't want to leave that. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of people end up DNFing just because they sat down too long and they got too comfortable, and maybe they took a nap. You know, if you're going to do it, just plan on being out there for, you know, up to whatever the cutoff is. 30 hours, I think, is usual. Just plan on being out there for that time, and try to go in well rested, which is hard because anytime you sleep before a race, you can't really sleep. It's kind of like a kid going home with a bad report card. You know what's coming. You're like, oh man. Like, I know I'm just things are about to go bad here in a little bit. So you get a little nervous about it.
Yeah, I always say basically the same thing for World's Toughest Mudder. So that we have a pit, so it's basically like a, you know, big permanent aid station. And, you know, every minute you spend in there, that's a minute you're not moving forward on the course, right? So, like, that's a minute you need to gain on your competitors or make up to get your mileage goal for the event.
Yeah.
And then for the week leading up, I try to basically just sleep as much as possible. And then for the night before the event, I usually fall asleep fine, but I usually wake up a couple hours later because my mind is, like, going crazy. And Hammer Nutrition has these thing called, like, REM caps. It's got, like, melatonin in it and 5-HTP and some other, like, sleep type aids. I'll usually, you know, have 2 pills of those in the middle of the night to try to knock myself back out, and that helps a little bit. So. Yeah,
getting those nerves settled. You know, because you got kind of have that adrenaline flowing, and, you know, end of the day, as much as you can relax, the better. Because the more pumped you are, you're just burning calories.
Yeah. I usually I put on an audiobook usually and try to zone out something nice and boring. And that usually puts me to sleep too. Or takes my mind off of running at least. So I find that helps.
Yeah, you gotta find your zen, man.
Yeah. So I know you've run a race in Jordan. I believe it was a marathon, like a desert marathon. Let's talk about that before we close it out and talk about the Runner's Hub, your store.
Yeah, I did it kind of on a whim. I was running a lot of, like, shorter distances, so I was in fairly good shape as far as speed goes, and just found out they're having this marathon. It was the middle of the desert, middle of the night. It's kind of crazy. So I just did it on a whim. It was kind of cool. So you go out in the middle of the desert and you park there, and they had some tents set up, and people from all over the world are out there. It's kind of crazy. And I wasn't prepared at all. I had literally shorts and a pair of running shoes, no shirt. Just that was my gear. the course was it was tiki torches. So you were running. There's some like sandy roads, but most of it was off roads, like just out in the desert. So the sand got pretty thick, and your shoes are just packed full of sand after the first mile. I tried like taking them out once, and then it was just a lost cause. But the crazy thing is, I was running, and I don't think they thought I would be where I'd be along the course that fast, and they didn't have the course set up. So with that, they didn't have water stops set up. So I'm running along, and I can see the truck ahead of me, and they see me because I got a headlamp on, and they see me, so they're like taking off, trying to get these torches set up, and I'm speeding up because I'm trying to catch them because I'm trying to get water, and we obviously speak a different language, so I'm yelling, trying to get them to stop, and they're like yelling back, and they're hauling, leaving me in the dust to set up the tiki torches so I know where I'm going next. Because it was basically you're running from tiki torch to tiki torch, and it was like one big huge loop. I think I had mid 3 hours out there running through the sand for that one. I ended up taking first place, but I don't want to toot my horn too bad. I don't think there was that great a competition. The next guy was about 5 hours. But it was a tough course, and people ask me all the time because I don't do a lot of road marathons. Actually, I have never done one unless it's like within a, I did like Stroll and Jim 42 miler a few weeks ago, and somewhere within there I did a marathon on the road, but I'm not really big into the road marathon scene. It's just too crowded for me. The whole rock and roll series is just crazy. So I get the question about, hey, you ever done a marathon? I've done one in the desert. And,
it's still a really good PR for
it was crazy. It burnt my legs out too, just because it was so uneven. So every time you like push off, that sand is giving. So definitely it was a good quad workout. But I got done with that thing really, really dehydrated. I think it was the course record for a few years, and then they brought in. There's a couple really good ultra runners in Jordan, and they do some of the big desert events, and I think he beat my course record for about 15 minutes or something.
So I know
I held it for a few years.
Yeah, I know the production. We get used to like a certain production value in the U.S. because that's just what we're accustomed to, and then you go overseas sometimes, and it's not the same quality. They don't have the same like standards of events. So it's usually I always find it an interesting experience. And I know I did a half marathon in Kuwait. It was a road marathon though, and like the event shirts, it was just like a black Nike shirt. Like it didn't say like Kuwait half marathon. It was just like here's a black shirt, and I was like, this is weird. Not what we're like. I was expecting like a big Kuwait something on there. And then the other thing that was interesting was, so Kuwait's obviously very conservative still. So there was actually women running in the race, and a lot of them were running in like essentially black tights, but like full length, so arms covered, legs covered, and then usually like a dress over their legs. And it wasn't.
Oh wow. It
wasn't middle of the summer, but it was like. I want to say it was late September or early October, so it was still warm. It was still like I was running in a singlet and shorts, and if it was socially acceptable, I probably would have been running shirtless. But these women were out there crushing it, and with heads covered and arms covered and legs covered, and I was like, all right.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, when I got done, like you're talking about shirts, like they give you the shirt and. Like, hey, what size? I'm like, I'll take a medium. I put it on. It's like a skin suit.
Oh, yeah, the sizing's also different. I have a couple of those. Or, like, it just doesn't fit right. Like, there's a lot of, like, extra space in, like, a random part of the shirt. And you're like, why would my...
Yeah, it's like...
Yeah, why would my...
I don't... I don't know why those things fit so different, but I put it on like, hey, let me get a large. I put that on like, hey, we still got ourselves a skin suit here. I never wore the shirt, but then it was funny. Like my prize for winning was a round trip ticket to Sri Lanka.
From Jordan, though.
Yeah, from Jordan. Like, I'm probably good.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so before we take off, let's talk about your store a little bit. So, Runners Hub, located in Clarksville, obviously a lot of great products in there. Before we give you like a plug of all the stuff you guys carry, what's it like opening your own running store, and what was some of the challenges you faced? Maybe some of the stuff you didn't expect to be challenges, and then it turns out it was. Kind of take us through that, because I think everyone's had a dream of like, hey, I'm going to quit whatever job I currently have and just go, open a gym or a running store or whatever. So. Yeah,
so it's I guess it could be nerve-wracking, because when you start out, the numbers that you're looking at of like, oh, I got to pay that per week or month or whatever. It's numbers that you're not used to dealing with. At least I wasn't. I've been in the Army for 20 years. We, within our line of work, they pay us well. I think, we do well. But the numbers that I was looking at, initially, like bringing in all these different brands and, how much I'm paying out, and you're signing up to do this stuff, and you don't have a customer yet. So you're really, really, you just need it to work, or else, things aren't going to work out for you. Because, you just can't get into that type of debt that's recoverable with, my normal Army income that's backing it. But, honestly, man, what I did initially was I kind of branded myself locally. So, locally, kind of everyone knew who I was, at least within the running scene. So, I was running a lot of 5 and 10Ks, winning a lot of stuff that's local, attending most of the group runs that were in town, things like that. So I was really making myself a brand before I even made, the store brand. So that helped out getting, instant customers, and then really, getting feedback from people that aren't your friends. Like, hey, what do you think about, me opening a running store to somebody at a group run that doesn't really know me? And then the feedback I was getting was, that would be awesome, because we don't have one local. So a lot of these people are going up to Nashville to do this, to make simple purchases for nutrition products or shoes or whatever. So so we definitely had a market void there. So we've been open for 5.5 years. It's done well throughout the 5.5 years. It's just some of the challenges initially were bringing in brands. We got opened with like New Balance and Mizuno pretty fast. But when you start dabbling in some of the bigger brands, Brooks, Asics, Saucony, some of those guys, they want you to have a building before they'll even talk to you. So you're really laying it out there. You're signing a lease on a building, and you don't have any brands to put in it, and you don't know when you're going to have brands to put in it, because they're going to get to you when they can get to you. And then so you're paying maybe 6 months worth of rent without even have a store yet. So there's just, I think the setting yourself up financially, because we didn't want to take out a big loan to do this. We wanted to kind of self-fund it. So that was kind of the nerve-wracking part. But once we started rolling with it, kind of the things that we saw that are challenges once you actually roll is just inventory forecast, because there could be this new hot shoe that's coming out, but and a certain brand's telling you that they're going to put all these marketing dollars into it, and you invest in it, but you don't know how it's gonna do. So understanding how much to bring in. Because sometimes you'll bring something in and it won't do well. Sometimes you'll bring something in and it'll do really well. So you want to be able to, give everyone that comes to that door, you want them to be able to buy something. So just making sure that you're maintaining your levels of inventory to where, someone comes in and you don't have to order them something all the time. They can order stuff offline. So yeah, and then there's a few things like learning curves for me was like, just because you love it doesn't mean someone else loves it. There's a couple brands out there that I was really into, into the mountain running stuff. La Sportiva. There's probably not a huge market for La Sportiva in Clarksville, Tennessee.
No.
But I really liked their shoes at one point. So, so it was, a few learning curves of like, hey, just because you love it doesn't mean everyone else is going to love it. So, knowing where to fund your dollars and know where to go heavy and know where to go light.
Cool. That's definitely informative, and I'm definitely glad you opened Runners Hub in Clarksville. So if you're in the Tennessee area, or for those of you who are coming down for the Spartan race, I think it's called Spartan Race Nashville, but it's actually like Spartan Race Fort Campbell. Travis's store is located, 5-10 minutes from Fort Campbell, where the race is being held. So make sure you stop by that. I believe the race is in late August or early September. I can't remember which one it is. But
yeah, definitely swing by BS. And that's kind of how the name says it all. That's kind of what we wanted was, just because you come in that door, don't feel like you have to spend your paycheck. You can come hang out. Whether you're down at Starbucks fueling for the other half of your run, or just want to go, see the latest and greatest and what's out there, and kind of the products that we're believing in right now. Stop by.
Cool. And then what's the future for Runners Hub?
So it's kind of cool. We've been open for 5.5 years now, and we've my wife and I kind of acknowledge that we've plateaued as far as that we can bring it. So we've recently coupled with or partnered with Fleet Feet. So we're going to be coming to Fleet Feet, which is really cool. It opens up a lot of stuff on the backside for us. Sarah and I will still own it, run it, kind of the same feel of it. It's just there's a ton of backside support that they can give us that really frees up us on the front side, so we can do some different things that we've been wanting to do, like training programs and more group runs, and just really kind of embracing the community a little bit more. We get our time gets eaten up a lot with me still being in the Army, and two, my wife having to run a lot of the backside stuff within the store. So partnering up with Fleet Feet should give us a ton more opportunities to do that.
Cool. If you could do it over, do you think the way you did it, where you kind of built your own brand first and then partnered with one of the major companies, is better, or like maybe going with the major company first and then trying to build out from there?
They both have their perks. I think I learned a lot just by starting my own business. So I was just at Fleet Feet Inc. Last week, kind of doing an orientation and doing different things. And man, if I didn't own my store before I was doing that, I would have been lost. And we're glad we did it the way we did it. I feel like it was financially, it was a way that we could afford, but two, it was I don't know. I just think it helped us learn the business a little bit better, because Sarah and I don't have any type of retail background, business background. We literally took a doodle on a piece of paper to, what we have now in 5 years. So, yeah, there's something to be proud about, just starting your own thing from the ground up that, nobody helped you with. It was funded by us. So I like that aspect of it.
Awesome. Well, Travis, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure having you. I know you had some. You're trying to get into another big ultra this year, and I guess that didn't pan out. But if you end up getting back into that one sometime in the future, we definitely want you back on the show to talk about that experience.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thanks for having me, and hopefully I gave somebody at least one piece of good advice out there.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Before we take off, any final shout-outs you want to give? Companies, people, friends, or whatever?
Yeah, hey, if you, like Evan said, if you're in town, stop by. You can also look us up on Facebook. We're the Runners Hub. Kind of weird. There's one that just started in the UK too, so you might find two. We're the cooler of the two.
Clearly.
But yeah, like us on Facebook. Also, we have a website, ClarksvilleRunnersHub.com, and that'll stay like that even after we go into Fleet Feet. It'll just merge into our Fleet Feet website. But yeah, man, appreciate you having us, and yeah, talk to you soon. Probably next weekend when you're fueling up.
Actually, no. I'm moving in a couple of days. Probably by the time this airs, I'll have already moved. So. Well,
someone's gonna have to fill your void.
Yeah, we'll try to find someone else to stop by on long runs on Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, well, with work being a small community, and then kind of these endurance events being a small community as well, so I'm sure I'll see you around again.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck with your store, Travis, and again, thanks for coming on. We'll see you guys next week.
All right, brother.